was messing around with my camera and other manner of technology. This is my first time planning an event, right? You use the whole planning thing to go live. You want to go live and you want to plan it and make it all official and let everybody know you're going live and all that stuff. And what happens? When you go live, you can't go live. So I don't know what happened. I want to apologize. The last 10 minutes, I have been on Facebook trying to go live with my Facebook Live channel or with my African World Study Group channel. And that did not happen at all. That did not happen. All good things come with a challenge. So tonight, that is the start of our challenge there. So I don't know what happened. Again, I apologize for that. Trying to go live on Facebook and YouTube simultaneously, and nothing happened. Didn't work. So that's interesting. My rebirth of my beloved study group, the African World Study Group, did not go off without a hitch. I was all planned. I mean, I got everything set up in the studio. I got my drum, I got my candle, I got my incense, got everything laid out, and I was there at 8 o'clock, ready to go. But as things would have it, if something, with Murphy's Law, if something can go wrong, it will go wrong. But we're not going to say that anything went wrong tonight because we are here. We are live on the Book of Faces, ready to have a good discussion, good conversation together. The only thing is, this is not posted on my page. This is not on the African World Study Group page. This is on my own page. But I'm still going to go forth with everything I wanted to do. So let's heal up, wheel up, bring it back, come rewind, and go back to my original plan, which was to start off with this. Out of the darkness came the light. So we light some candles in the tradition of life and sharing knowledge. So the light of wisdom, let it be shown upon us, let it be with us. And today we have dark berries and cedar. So dark berries and cedar. This is just from a local store. And I want to set this down now that we have the light that is ready. We are now going to get ready. We've got the Namaste incense. So we must set the mood, create the environment for our discussion tonight. I can't share a glass of wine with you all, but I will share some good vibrations and ting with the incense. Again, this is a Namaste incense here. Smells delicious. I mean, not delicious. Smells really good. Smells divine. So I hope this brings us some cleansing of the space so that we can be about the business of what we've all gathered here for today. So please bear with me. But as all good things begin, we have to take our time to get ready for this. And so I do not own the rights to this music at all, but I wanted to start the mood with something familiar to most of you, to some of you.
your heart goes. This now time won't let go. Your legs don't seem to run. I see you fighting for the sunlight. Let it go. When your spirit starts to scream and you open up your wings, you soar. Black girl, beauty finds in your bloodline. The world wants to give you more with. Secrets of all the queens are locked inside your precious jeans. Say, oh, see, no matter where you start, you somehow make it to the top. 'Cause you know, see, that is so beautiful. Oh, it's like the sun and dance to the drum. So beautiful. Oh, that is so beautiful.
Yes, she start off with the drum. Call on the ancestors them to come, give us permission. So, as we're supposed to in our tradition, Potambico or libation, which is symbolizing that cycle of life. We know that in the water is the most precious element that we have here on this planet. It symbolizes life. And so we usually would have a plant to pour into, but tonight we're just going to pour into this glass. And we call on the name of our ancestors that we want present, that we want to be remembered. Because in the African tradition, to have your name forgotten is to be dead. That is the true death, the final death. So we pour a libation of Tambico. We first pour to the universal mother, Father God, who is and shall forever be. Amen. Ashe. Amin Ra. Ashe. Oldumare. Ashe. Ogun. Ashe. Oshun. Ashe. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ashe. Jesus Christ. Ashe. Yahweh. Ashe. We pour to the great spirit of the mother. Ashe. The great spirit of the father. Ashe. We pour to the spirit of nature, the wind. Ashe. The fire. Ashe. The sun. Ashe. The wind, the darkness. Ashe. The cold. Ashe. The moisture. Ashe. And we pour to the earth, of course, from which we all come. Pour to my personal ancestors, my mother and father, Paul and Lydia, Ashe. And so pour to your ancestors. Ashe. As we begin, so shall we end. Pouring to the universal mother, Father God, who is and shall forever be. Amen. 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 Ra. Ashe. All right. So you say, brother, come on, why you got all this production going on? This is just a little talk, a little conversation about the cultivated African. What is it to be a cultivated African? So I wanted to start off what it is to be a cultivated African, to be a cultivated human being, one who remembers, one who knows where one comes from. And so I'm going to keep saying one. I guess I don't want to sound like Bob Dole talking about Bob Dole. So, but we want to have culture, right? Because that's what we talk about. To be cultivated is to have culture. It's to remember those who came before you. It is to carry some type of legacy or tradition or behaviors that one would recognize as being worthy of being remembered or being carried on. So we start with the fire, which represents knowledge and wisdom. We pour or rather we light the incense, which gives us that sense of being who we are, because we are sensual beings in this world. We're not just, uh, you know, eat and sleep and those carnal things. We're sensual. We have our senses. And so to create that environment, we have rituals. And so that's why we started off with a ritual. So if you'll bear with me, I hope you appreciated that. I hope you understand the seriousness of those rituals, and that, you know, we see it in the movies where we're going to pour a little out for the brothers who ain't here, right? We saw that in Cooley High. And that is a part of African tradition, a part of African ritual. And not just African, people all around the world pay homage to their ancestors in similar ways. So we wanted to bring that here because this is about cultivation. This is about being who we are supposed to be in the way that works best for us. And so that's what we're going to talk about tonight. But I wanted to, start off with a little bit of culture. And again, I do not own the rights to any of that music. Brother James moved to Atlanta about 10 or 12 years ago. And Sister Navasha, I'm not sure exactly where Navasha is, but in honor of Baltimore's own, we play a little bit of our fertile ground in honor of those brothers and sisters. I'm not sure if that album was made here or not, but Navasha and James are definitely Baltimore folks, and we honor and give thanks for them and for their work, because that's a powerful song. That was a powerful group, and so I wanted to start off with something familiar. Navasha has actually been to a couple of my ceremonies we used to have back in the day, so I wanted to start off with something befitting. And my daughter played it a little earlier. So Black is Beautiful by Fertile Ground, as we lead into the Cultivated Afrikan. So I wanted to introduce myself in case some of you do not know who I am. I know there are probably a lot of my friends watching, people who have been in the study group previously. And so I want to thank you for attending. But there may be people eventually that see this that don't know who is Brother Kamal, who's Baba Kamal. And so I wanted to take the time to formally introduce myself. My name is Kamal Kwabena Ayandatayero. I am a citizen of the world, residing in Baltimore, Maryland, Tubman City. I have been organizing African consciousness events and such for the past 28, 27 years. And started the African World Study Group in 1994, and had a great success with that. Back in the day, as we say, we would take study tours to New York City and other places, and we would literally pick a book. We would read that book, and we would come together as a group to discuss it. So the African World Study Group was around for about 4 or 5 years, from 1994 till after I got married and had children. Had to spend my time trying to earn some money to feed these babies, which is also required, right? So I started this online Facebook page a couple of years ago, and wanted to get back into what I felt was very successful, and which really gave me a chance to learn and build community with folks who were of like mind, and wanted to know about African culture, about African people, in an effort to try to make a better world for ourselves. First of all, to make a better self for us, to be better people, to be better human beings, to be better citizens of the world. And so we would get together and we would read and study and share and break bread. I mean, Lord, some of the best meals I can remember came from that study group. We would fast, and discuss things. It was really a great organization. So now in the 2000s, I wanted to do that and use a digital format, because I know people all around the world could potentially want to be a part of this community. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but I want to introduce myself. I am a self-taught amateur historian and teacher. I have actually presented presentations at local colleges and high schools and middle schools, and some that aren't local. University of Maryland, Baltimore County, Morgan State University, Mary Baldwin College in Virginia, Coppin State College here in Baltimore, different school systems here where I've done educational resource and support, mostly around Black History Month, to support those efforts that may have been lacking in school systems. So yeah, so I've been doing this for a while and wanted to get back started again. So I want to thank you for viewing and attending and perhaps liking and letting people know about this conversation we're going to have tonight. This is going to be a conversation. I'm not sure exactly how the comments and stuff work here, but we're going to give it a try. We're going to give it a try, God doggone it. I don't see any interaction thing. Oh, here it is. Yeah, okay. Okay, there we go. What's up, Eugene? Mama C, give thanks. Oh, Lord. Miss Jones, Miss Jones, Miss Jones, the other Miss Jones. Thank you for showing up. So yeah, please like, share this with your folks you may know that may be interested. So now let's get into what is the Cultivated African. What is this all about? What is this discussion about? And if you're here with me, probably you're already a person interested in self-improvement or self-cultivation, learning more about yourself, learning more about your people, learning more about your history. And so that's why we're here. So we open with the drum and the music and the vibrations and the candle and the incense. Mama C, you're my elder right now, so I'm gonna ask you for permission to speak, and I can see you, so I'm gonna assume that you've given me permission to speak. You are my elder, and so that is what I will do. I've introduced myself, and so now, what's the reason for this topic, the cultivated African? Why are we cultivating stuff? Like, Brother Kamal, what are you talking about, Baba Kamal? What are we doing here? So, again, being a citizen of the world and wanting to help improve conditions of our people and of humanity altogether. But of course, charity starts at home, right? So, where do we come from with the topic of to be a cultivated African? And I just look around at the world that we're in. We live in a country, if you're here in the States, that is the wealthiest country on the planet, but we have some of the worst problems on the planet. We have more people in jail than most other countries around the planet combined. We have more wealth and more waste than any other country around the world. We have more pain. We have more like everything. Like go hard or go home. America goes hard with its money and goes hard with its suffering. So we look around at our community and we think we should be in a better place. We have come a long way. I'm not one of those people who are saying that Black folks have not made any gains in the last 100 years or so, but we definitely have a long way to go. It seems like we had just overcome. We got out of Jim Crow in the 70s. We're finally able to really perhaps be a part of that American dream. And then something happened. Our families broke up. And so what used to be a problem outside of our community, right? A problem forced on us by other folks, right? We literally couldn't ride buses and we couldn't look white folks in the eyes. We walked past them. We would have to walk off of the street, off of the sidewalk and into the street when walking past white folks. And people think that's a long time ago. It's just 40, 50 years ago, maybe 40 years ago down south in some places, but it's in our lifetime. It's in my lifetime that these things have changed. And just as we were getting rid of someone else oppressing us, somehow something happened and we began to oppress ourselves. So Carter G. Woodson talks about the mentality of a person that's a slave. If there's no back door for them to go to, they'll make their own back door. And so somehow something has happened with us where that now we have the freedom and capability to be free and take care of ourselves and do other things. The core of us has seemed to have gotten rotten. Women can work. And, I think 100 years ago, I think women could not own property in some states. And we've made those strides. I mean, Black men could not own certain types of businesses. We've made those strides. When we were in the armies in the First World War, Second World War, we were relegated to certain types of support positions, but now we can be in the infantry and we can be air pilots and drone operators, and we can do everything now. But something has seemed to have happened to our community. So by looking at that, it's like we've become wild. We've become a patch of land that has an abundant amount of fruit and vegetation, but it's wild, and we don't have any way to take use or make use of those things in this wild state. And as a person, specify rotten, yes, rotten. So as a person that I am an agriculturalist, I grow, not weed, y'all, I grow food. Y'all it's crazy. But I'm a grower, and I always like to look at nature and discover lessons by looking at nature. And so we seem to have a bounty, right? We're the wealthiest Black folks on the planet, literally. If you take the gross domestic product of Black folks, we would be, I believe, the fourth or fifth largest African group of wealth on the planet. But we seem to we're seeming not to be doing something right. And so even though we have the potential to be bountiful, we're not benefiting from that. And I think we need to be cultivated. So that's where I got the whole theme from. And so are we ready for the question? Are we ready for the question? I guess I've sort of already gotten into that question. By looking at our current state of the world, what is it to be cultivated? What is it to cultivate land? What is it to cultivate a human being? Well, the opposite of being cultivated, in my opinion, and this is all my opinion, is to be in chaos, to be chaotic. The opposite of cultivated is to be chaotic. So let's take the example of the most plentiful place on the earth, right? Where you've got more life per square inch or meter than anywhere else on the earth, and that's a jungle, right? By the way, I'm very well acquainted with jungles now. But it's a jungle, right? But is a jungle useful? It's full of life, but it's chaos, and stuff is just growing everywhere, and things are happening, and it's life. Life is chaotic, right? And there's no order. So you can't really cultivate and grow crops that would be fruitful for you that you can store, because there's no order to that thing. So to cultivate is to create just some order, So we are a bountiful people. We have all the things that we need, but we have no order. We exist in a state of chaos to some degree. And so I want to talk about what it takes to cultivate human beings. What does it take to cultivate a culture? What does it take to cultivate, first starting with ourselves, to be, who the Creator made us to be, right? Free from the distractions and false images and false narratives that occupy so much of the space that we live in. And I love this example this time of year. On Sunday, spring forward, fall back, right? We're going to fall back. Time is going to stand still from 2:00 on Sunday morning for an hour, and then it's going to be 2:00 when it should have been 1:00. So here in the United States, in most places in the United States, I think there's some places that opt out of daylight savings. We have a false time. Like, we have false time. Why? Why do we allow ourselves to exist in a state with false time? We just had Columbus Day or something a couple weeks ago. Some places call that Native American Heritage Day or whatever, or Indigenous Nations Day. But a good part of the world still calls it Columbus Day. A fallacy. Columbus didn't discover anything. We promote, and this, I get it. The kids look cute, and it's the way we grew up. But we promote Santa Claus and some dude coming down the chimney. I remember I lived in the city. We didn't have a chimney. I used to wonder, how did Santa Claus get in my house to bring these toys, right? We create cognitive dissonance and stuff in children. I literally said this to myself: we don't have a chimney, so Santa must come down. He gotta come down the skylight. I know Santa Claus come down the skylight in my bedroom because I lived in a row house in the city. We had no chimney, but we had a skylight because the middle rooms did not have an outside window, but we had skylight. So I said, Santa is coming down the skylight, and I'm going to catch Santa Claus when he bring me my stuff because I got stuff all the time. But man, I never saw that fool. So we have a world and a culture that promotes fantasy. They want us to stay in the fantasy sometimes to keep the beast alive, to keep feeding the beast. So to be cultivated is to be productive, right? Again, you can have a plot of land, you can have some area growing lots of things, lots of fruit and so forth. But if it's not cultivated, you may not be able to reap the benefits from all the bounty that's potentially there. So before we go further, I wanted to see if any of you had any questions. If you wanted to post a question you wanted to discuss before we move forward, I have a couple periods here where I wanted to allow for this to be conversation. So if you have questions, if you have anything you'd like to add or propose, let me know. I wish I knew how to add people. Again, I am new to this whole thing. And I know when you're on your phone, I know how to add people. But when you're actually on a laptop, I don't know how to add folks. Because I would call Mrs. Jones, Mrs. Jones, Mrs. Jones, Mrs. Jones. Y'all didn't know I could sing, did you? So let me stop. Anyway, again, if you have any questions, please just post them there and I'll get to them as we go ahead through this thing. So to be cultivated is to be productive, right? We want to be productive. We don't just want to be a jungle or a wilderness. We want to be productive. We want to be beneficial to ourselves, to the world we live in. And as I said before, vegetation can grow wild. It can be stuff growing everywhere. And I've always said that life itself is essentially feminine. That's no doubt. You get no qualms from me. Life itself is essentially feminine. We know this scientifically. We know that all children are born with a YY chromosome, and then one of the Y's turn to X or something like that. Like embryos and stuff start off as feminine, and then something happens and one of the chromosomes changes and it becomes a male. So life is essentially feminine, and life full of, jungles and rainforests are full of life. You've got, bacteria and fungi growing in the ground. You've got the ants and the insects, and then you've got, the other small little invertebrates, and then you've got what do you call mice, rodents, and other layers of life until you get to the canopy, and you've got birds and monkeys and so forth. So the tropical rainforests are full of life, but they can be quite chaotic. So life can be chaotic. And sometimes we just have to insert a little bit of order in that to be really beneficial. So to cultivate means we got to get some weeds out. We got to get the weeds out. We have to get down on our hands and knees and bend our back and pull some weeds out. And we have some weeds in our culture. And what do weeds do? What is a weed, first of all? Again, keeping with this horticultural theme here. What is a weed? A weed is nothing but a plant, right? But it's a plant that we don't want in a certain space at a certain time. So I know growing up, we used to talk about dandelions and people would call them weeds and stuff. And I always thought they were pretty, especially when you get the little white fluffy things floating around the sky, until I realized that that's one of the reasons why I was sneezing. Although I think I'm more allergic to pollens than I am the dandelion stuff. But you disagree that the forest is chaos, the specific life is source. Very, very true. We're going to keep on the theme real quick. My example. So we got to get the weeds out. And some of the, like everything may have a purpose, but it may not have a purpose in a certain time and space. So we want to pull those weeds out, because what does that weed do? The weed actually sucks off nutrition and water and other things from what you want to grow. So although dandelions may be beautiful and have a purpose, when you're trying to grow some tomatoes or trying to grow something else that you may want to eat to survive, it's nice. Crabgrass may serve a beautiful purpose, but that crabgrass is choking off the tomatoes or the plants or the vegetation that we want at that certain point in time. So we've got to get some weeds out. We've got some cultivation to do within our culture, within our community. Um, and what are those weeds? Well, first, before we talk about that, let's talk about what culture is, right? Because here in this world, we talk about culture. I'm in a certain culture, and we have our regional cultures. I'm from B more, yo. We got the B more culture. We have our little slang, and we have the things that we do. We've got in Baltimore, we have crabs and seafood, and what else do we have? Utz potato chips and Old Bay seasoning, right? Then down the road, we have the District of Columbia, which is its own unique culture. When I first went to college and heard go-go music, I'm like, what in God's earth is this? Oh, that's trash can beating music. But anyway, I grew to actually love go-go music. I actually ended up throwing a go-go. Don't tell nobody from Baltimore. I actually threw a go-go. Actually hired junkyard band at a local venue and had junkyard. But anyway, so we have our regional cultures. New York. The New Yorkers got their thing, right, and Philly got the Philly Jones and all that, and then we get down south. The dirty. They got their own thing. So we have cultures that are regional, but I think in general, we as Black folk have certain values and certain things that we all hold true to being our culture. And those things, actually being a person that travels, and when I go to a place, I want to see other Black people and meet them and find out what their world is like. There's certain themes in that culture that is universal. It's not just here. It's in Africa. It's in South America, Central America. Certain foods we all vibe to. I think fried catfish may be a Black delicacy all around the world, everywhere, or fried fish in general. Of course, chicken in any form. But let's talk about culture. So culture, and I'm going to read this definition, of course. Culture is an umbrella term which encompasses the social behavior and norms found in human societies, as well as the knowledge, belief, arts, laws, customs, capabilities, and habits of the individuals in these groups. So again, culture is an umbrella term which encompasses the social behavior and norms found in human societies, as well as knowledge, beliefs, arts, laws, customs, capabilities, and habits of the individuals in these groups. All right. So I would add to that the purpose of a culture, right? The purpose of a culture is to transmit values, right? The purpose of a culture is to transmit life. Because if the culture does not create life-sustaining ways and technologies, life ends, right? So culture is the thing by which societies and civilizations transmit industries, right? Behaviors that promote life for that group. I would say that we as Black folks here in this country have a culture that does not really benefit us. It is a false mentality that actually benefits someone else. And we can talk about that later. But our culture really doesn't benefit us primarily. It benefits the greater American culture. And that's where I believe some of those weeds come from. So what is our culture, right? Our culture is, unfortunately, sex, money, and God. Sex, money, and God. I mean, yeah, Black folks like to work. We like to work. We do our thing. But I think primarily, you talk about relationships, intimacy. It's sex. It's money. It's gaining material so that we can have sex or have partners or whatever. So we can have independence. And God, like, we are a spiritual people, right? We are a people, and this transcends all languages, all continents. And when you talk about Black folks and our spirituality, we are a spiritual people. We are a people. Dr. Clark said, we out Pope the Pope and out Muhammad. We are the true believers. When something is supposed to be a certain way, we believe it's supposed to be that way. And no matter what the spiritual system is, we want to do that thing and express it in a certain unique way, and we will live or die by that. Again, Dr. Clark, peace be upon him, said, "We out Pope the Pope and out Muhammad. We are the true believers," I would say, in whatever we do. Um, and I think other folks, when they look at religion, well, yeah, it's nice, but you know, I got to do something else over here, because I think also Dr. Clark said, if Christians were really Christians, there would have never been slavery. There would never be any of this oppressive stuff that we have now. And we have it today, right? If America was really a quote unquote Christian nation, right, you're going to promote um, um, the right to life, right? Right? You want every woman to have every baby conceived, yet you have no charity during that child's life. Oh, pull up your bootstraps, rugged individualism. We don't, you got to get it on your own. You got to go to jail. We want to murder you. Like, so it's out of whack, right? So of course this country is not a Christian nation. We have no charity. We have no tenderness. We have no kindness. We have all the tenets that Christ spoke about, love, forgiveness, charity. We don't have any of that in our greater culture. But we as a Black folks, we are a spiritual people. But some of that also is out of alignment, because I think we misunderstand what God is, and we'll talk about that later as well. So, what are the outcomes of our culture? What do we have as an indicator that our culture is actually working to our benefit? Do we have any? Um, are we getting the outcomes that we want? I want you to ask yourself that. In your life, do you see our culture benefiting us or somebody else? If the culture benefits someone else, it's a false mentality. It's a false psyche. We are operating in a way that's not to our benefit, which is insanity. Every other organism on the face of the planet operates out of a way to protect itself, but somehow our culture does not. Um, that's my summary of it. But of course, there's more details, and again, just my opinion. But what are our outcomes? Our outcomes are we have more wealth than ever before, but we also have more death and people in prison, and homeless people, and people that aren't married, children that are growing up without parents, children that are growing up lost. They're raising themselves. Our values are not on the family as they were 30 or 40 years ago. They're on material. And I don't want to go too much into that, but I think we've lost our way to some degree. Our culture does not produce something that is to our benefit. Our culture produces consumers, which is to someone else's benefit. So I would say that our outcomes aren't what we desire. We may have, a $60,000 car in the driveway. We may have a $500,000 house. We may have, some of us, some money in the bank, although most people live paycheck to paycheck, even with all of those so-called items. But we're still lonely. We're still isolated. We're still, you've got rates of depression. And, when I was growing up, Black people didn't commit suicide. But now, I mean, our culture is changing. We are changing. The souls of Black folks are changing to something foreign. And it's mostly being done voluntarily by ourselves. And so we've got to look at what our outcomes are and see if they're really what we want. Like I used to say, when I was younger, when I was in college and doing my plan to take over the world, I was going to be a millionaire by the time I was 30. you know. But instead, I decided to start the African World Study Group and cultivate myself. I didn't just stay focused on money. Although money was good and I made good money, I've always made good money. There's always been something more to life than money. So again, we have to look at our outcomes, and even our outcomes in our own lives and the lives of our children. I consider myself to be a Baba. I am Baba Kamal, and I think about how my children are doing, and my children are great. They are doing well. But sometimes I still feel like there's some ways that I failed my own children by being in this culture. Um, again, so let's look at what our outcomes are. Which is why we must cultivate ourselves. Again, I talk about, um, being a baba and having children and wanting to do something good for them and to leave a better world for them, which takes my own cultivation of myself. There are certain behaviors that I have that I work on daily to improve, communication and focus and understanding that there's a time and a place for everything in this. There's a time to be generous, and then there's a time to be selfish. There's a time to work, 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 Robin. And there's a time to rest. There's a time and a place for everything. And so we have to be balanced, and there's always room for improvement. Um, I was talking to my therapist. Yes, I have a therapist. Most people need a therapist. The other day, and one of his assignments was to, as I proclaim myself to be a Baba, how I define myself, where's there room for improvement? And so I had to, get out of my arrogance and really look at myself as a father and say, where can I improve on being a father? Where can I improve on being a Baba? So that self-cultivation, that spiritual work has to continue. It has to continue. Self-reflection is required daily. We have an example. We have homes and cars and things that are, external items. That home, no matter how well you built it, it's going to need something replaced. It's going to have a crack in the wall. There's going to be a screw come loose in the door. There's going to be a shingle that gets blown off by the wind. So all things need maintenance. We need maintenance. So never feel too comfortable with yourself. Always have space in your own ego that allows you to evaluate yourself so that you can be better, so that you can grow. A cup that's full can't receive anything else. We have to allow opportunity for us to be critical of ourselves, not too critical, because sometimes we do that, but to allow room for growth. We have to cultivate ourselves on a daily basis. Um, Spiritual cultivation. Why do I believe what I believe? Why do I behave the way I behave? Do I believe these things because I've experienced them for myself, that I've felt this for myself, or am I experiencing a spiritual life through someone else's understanding, through someone else's experience? Does my spiritual expression truly reflect my internal journey? Does it truly reflect my own lived experience? We have to ask ourselves this. And when I say spiritual cultivation, I'm not just talking about our relationship with a higher power. I'm talking about our spirit, our communication with ourselves, your communication with yourself. When you pray, right? That's a good practice that my good friend Nate Brown got me into when I was younger, right? I was always a good spiritual person, believed in God, but the ritual of sitting down and bowing my head and praying, I did not always have. I think I may have been in the 10th grade. And again, my best friend, one of my lifelong friends, Nate Brown, we went to high school together. He would grab my tray and run around the room, run around the cafeteria until I prayed. And he was a fast guy, and I'm me. And I'm like, man. So finally, I stopped chasing his fools. Said, fine, I'll pray. Started bowing my head in prayer. And so that ritual of prayer is not really for God. The Most High knows, right? The Most High knows how we feel in our heart. The Most High knows what we think, right? What the prayer really is for us to talk to ourselves, to feel connected beyond ourselves, to feel connected beyond our ego and our id and our super ego, all those Jungian or Freudian terms, I forget who it is. So prayer is really for us. God knows what we feel. The Most High, the universal spirit, Mother, Father, God knows the deal, right? But the prayer is for us. It's a chance for us to talk to God through our own consciousness. It's an opportunity for us to connect. beyond where we might normally connect. So that spirit I'm talking about is not just a spiritual conversation with a higher power, but the spiritual conversation with oneself. To be able to listen to oneself, to be able to follow one's instincts, to be able to follow your own internal voice, which is so hard to listen to in this world. We've got so much external stimuli coming at us that sometimes it's very hard to hear what's the genuine voice that comes from within. So we've got to learn to tune into that, to cultivate that conversation with ourselves, with our higher power, which is in us. Oh Lord, I'm getting into this whole spiritual thing. Let me stop. But yeah, we've got to cultivate our spiritual selves. And hopefully when you cultivate that, you're cultivating that for the good, to be a better you, so that you can be a better human being, a better person, a better citizen, a better father, a better mother, a better son, a better daughter, a better teacher, a better whatever you are, a better leader, a better follower, a better wife, a better nephew, I don't know, better trash deliverer, a better carpenter, everything starts within. So the spiritual cultivation. And here comes the emotional cultivation. We've got to cultivate ourselves emotionally. Now, I'm not even getting on anything African, culturally related to being a Black person yet. We're not even getting there. We're just talking about basic things as human beings we need to work on. We'll get to that other stuff later. We started off with the incense and the candles and the drumming and the Black is beautiful, power to the people. But before we become good cultural Africans, we have to be just good human beings, good, healthy human beings. So there's that emotional cultivation. What is it to be emotionally cultivated? Are you able to experience delayed gratification? Are you able to experience the world and look at your emotions as if they are a script? Right? We are not our emotions. Emotions are a part of us, but they aren't all of us. There's some sad stories. I was talking to the brothers on Reality Speaks bookstore website. We had a podcast a couple of weeks ago. And one of the brothers shared that his brother was murdered when he was young. He had went to a party and was dancing with a girl and was getting his groove on, was doing his thing. He was a good dancer. And one of the other guys, got jealous. His emotions got the best of him. And after the party, he murdered my friend's brother in cold blood because of his emotions, his emotional immaturity, his emotional stuntedness, right? And a lot of us walk around as people who are victims of our emotions, as if emotions were like a metal suit around us making us do things. No, our emotions are a script. You sit inside of the command center. You are inside the command center. And everything you do in this life is a choice. In this command center, you tell your arms to move, right? You tell your legs to walk. You tell your mouth to speak. Emotions, right? As you're in that command center, because you are the boss of yourself. Those emotions pop up on a screen, right? Through the window. And you have a choice to act on the emotion or a choice to evolve and let that emotion be an emotion. It is simply that thing that's outside of who you really are that wants to control you. So, okay, maybe the emotion is not on a screen in the window. Maybe somebody turned the lights down, right? That's the emotion. Or they made the room cold. That's the emotion as you experience it. You don't have to set a fire to yourself to get warm, so to speak. You can let that emotion pass. Being reactive and responsive to every emotional up and down and high and low is not a way to be a cultivated human being. Your emotions are not you. You are greater than your emotions. Um, which is why some people say that romantic love is false love. Like romantic love is based on your emotion. Oh, I love you. Yeah, baby, you sure is fine. I love you. Oh my God, yo, that girl was so good. Yo, I was loving Shorty. Man, I can't stand that chick, yo. She get on my nerves, yo. Emotions, feelings, not things that come and go, right? So if we can get past the emotional component of that and really understand what life might be really about, that all people are imperfect and we all have good qualities and qualities that are the opposite thereof. I don't like to say bad, but perhaps qualities that aren't appreciated at that time and space, we could maintain our relationships, accept people for who they are, and grow beyond um, our emotional swings, um, our fits of rage. I remember back in the day, it was somebody step on your tennis shoes, and man, you might get beat up or stabbed or shot for stepping on somebody's shoes. Emotions, especially an emotional man, can be very dangerous. I almost made a huge mistake when I was younger. I was I was in love, and the young lady I was with had another. She had got another boyfriend, and he was from another town. He came to visit, and one time when he was over there, she called me. It sounded like they were fighting, and she called me and just let the phone, sit. I guess so I could hear them fighting, right? So in a fit of rage, I you know, went and got a weapon and went to her house. And I had a friend with me too, another guy. He wasn't as big as me, but he's a big dude. And she just saw us outside. I'm like, Lord, I cannot let her then boyfriend out the house because she know we would have whooped his butt, and we had that weapon. So in a fit of rage, I almost did something very foolish as a young person. I was not cultivated. So an emotional, uncultivated man is a very dangerous man in particular. So yeah, we have to cultivate ourselves spiritually, our mental health. Know when to say enough is enough. Know when to give ourselves a respite. Know when to give ourselves a break. Um, Black folks, we are not pillars of steel that can just be used and used and used. We've got to give ourselves a respite. We've got to give ourselves a break. We've got to cultivate ourselves emotionally for our own mental health. And of course, there's economic cultivation. This is the one that's going to hit you. I'm going to bring up some PE. Here it is. Bam! Let me stop. Economic cultivation. As I said earlier, we are the wealthiest group of Africans on the planet. We have more wealth and resources combined than, I believe, 90% of the continental Africans as nations. And we have a resource that we just waste. We all have heard about it. We've all know about it. We need to support Black businesses and all those types of things that we like to spew, but it goes beyond that, right? It goes beyond supporting Black businesses. It's about priorities for ourselves, making the most of our own economic resource, our own economic tools. One example is how, as soon as young people become adults, there's no cultivation of the young people to become financially literate. Most of the times because the adults aren't financially literate. Um, we have we have delayed gratification, and we aren't able to build wealth. Um, and I'll use myself as an example. When I finished college, I came home and I lived in my parents' house, and I was making good money. And people were like, man, why don't you go get yourself an apartment? Like, man, I ain't getting no apartment. I'm not making nobody else rich. I'm going to save up my money and buy a house. And so I bought my first house at 23. Year and a half after graduating from school, I had a house, man. And buying that house at 23 was one of the best things I ever did, one of the best decisions I ever made. It allowed me to have freedom to start a business and to do things that I wouldn't have done otherwise. But it's having delayed gratification. I didn't take my first vacation until I got married at 29. Like, I mean, a real vacation. Like for me, in my 20s, a vacation was, getting in the car and I don't know, driving to the beach or something to come back with a couple sandwiches, something like that. That was it. That was a vacation. But now, man, these young people are flying to Miami like every other week. They doing it big. They got all that, like no delayed gratification. People having young folks, and God bless them, having weddings and spending $30,000 and $50,000 and don't even having a house to live in. Like the debt for the wedding lasts longer than the wedding. People are married for a year, and then it takes them 10 years to pay off the debt from the wedding. Child support, like men, brothers, listen to me. Do not get on child support. Always fight for your rights as an equal partner and parent. Always be active in your children's lives. If you have a plate of food, if you have a place to lay your head, so does your child, right? So does your child. I have seen so many relationships where women are with a man, right? The man is paying child support to an old relationship, and the woman is receiving child support from her old relationship. And it's like nobody can move or do anything because we got all these child support orders. Oh, like it's just crazy. So our economic cultivation is serious. We have to learn delayed gratification. We have to learn how to strategically allow ourselves to grow, pool our money together. Everybody doesn't need a 7-bedroom house and all this other stuff. I mean, if you got that kind of bedrooms, you need to have your cousins and uncles and some neighbors and somebody else. I'm a proponent of house sharing. I house share. I got a room for rent. Matter of fact, I got a room for rent right now. Right now. Somebody out there want a room for rent? You holler at your boy. Let me run your little credit Joan to see what's up. A couple references. Nice room too. But yeah, like we've got to be more practical with things. We've got to learn to cook food more. Like just so much economic discipline is needed in our culture, which is, of course, that economic cultivation. And so next is cultural, right? Marriage, art, our arts. I'm talking about our music and our films, our value systems. What are our value systems? Like, do we have the outcomes that we desire from our value systems? What is a marriage? What is a relationship? Why do men and women have such problems relating these days? What is it about our forms of relating that are so antiquated? Because they don't work for us. Again, culture is supposed to produce outcomes that benefit the people that have that culture. And if it does not benefit you, if it is no longer working, it is time to evolve beyond those institutions that no longer serve us. I don't know what the answer is. It's something that's beyond me, but I know what the question is. Why aren't things working? And we can't just point the finger. It's the woman's fault. It's the man's fault. No, it's not. anybody's individual fault. It is our culture that is producing dysfunctional households that do not serve our people, that do not serve us. It serves somebody else. So I'm not a conspiracy person, but look, if you keep people in a culture arguing it and at it all the time, what happens? You have a bigger consumer base because this guy need a house, this woman need a house, this woman needs a car, this man needs a car, this woman needs a bed, this man needs a bed, this woman needs a refrigerator, and so forth and so on. So you have all these single people buying double stuff. I want to say the SHIT word, but I'm going to chill on that right now because I'm being all spiritual and stuff, being all spiritual, so I ain't going to drop a couple profane words. But yeah, so you think about simple as that. We already talked about, we didn't talk about, but we saw the other week where Facebook has been promoting negative content because negative content gets more interactions than positive content. So what does that mean? If you think about it in the same line of thought, negative behavior as consumers begat more consumers. Because now since we can't get along, we got to buy more ish. We got to live separate. We got to have two of everything, if not more. Right? So I would say the culture we have by design is serving someone else. But I'm going to leave that alone for another day. So for myself, I always use a model of ancient Kemet, right? And this is without the biblical reference of slaves and all that narrative, which we now know scientifically or historically that's not accurate. We were not enslaved in Kemet. It took skilled people to build pyramids. They found now records of like very well-to-do people who organized labor, and like the people who built those pyramids were artisans. But anyway, I use Kemet as an example, not because of spaceships and pyramids. I use Kemet as an example because it's an example, a lasting example of what Black people can accomplish when they are united and focused. The longest lived society and culture on Earth, the longest society and culture recorded on Earth are our ancestors, are Black folks. Why is it now that we are so dysfunctional, that we do not have a culture that promotes and supports and sustains life for us? People say, well, how did they build the pyramids? When you got the whole nation working on something, it can get done. Miracles can happen. That's how they were able to build those structures. No hocus pocus. Unity. A whole nation working towards something, and it can get done, right? So I like to use Kemet as an example of how we as a people should be focused, united, and allow ourselves to be developed. So that is pretty much it for tonight. I did not have opportunity to peace, Bob and Kosi. I did not have opportunity to, again, learn the ins and outs of Facebook Live and all this and that. And, it was supposed to pop up live on my African World Study Group page, but it did not. It came to my page. But I wanted to have a discussion. Like, I want this platform to be a discussion. I don't want it to be a monologue. When I had, and Mama Cordelia could tell you, when I had the New African Ministries, we started off church like church for everybody else. But I always felt foreign standing in front of people preaching. I did a good job of it, but it felt foreign to me. And so eventually that changed into a conversation forum. We would go to each other's homes and sit around and have conversation. So I love conversations. That's my thing. That's what I want to do. So I want us to have a conversation. So if you could, please go to the African World Study Group on Facebook, on YouTube. It's on YouTube too. It's African World Study Group. It may come up as AWSG, but please go to African World Study Group on Facebook and follow, and go to the African World Study Group on YouTube and subscribe, because I want this to be, the topic of tonight was the Cultivated African. The whole video will pop up and you'll be able to watch it from the beginning. It's been basically a 40-minute presentation on what I mean by to cultivate the African. And that's what I want to do with the African World Study Group, is to continue to develop and cultivate Black folks, to try and have us to pick out the weeds in our culture so that we can develop ourselves again, spiritually, emotionally, economically, and culturally. You know, when I think about the music that is, and I don't want to sound like an old person, but the music these young people play, it's ridiculous. Oh my God. When I was young, yeah, we had Just Ice and we had Ice-T and we had dirty music. That girl is a slut. She got crabbies. Anyway, y'all might not remember that joke, but yeah, we had that music. But you know what we did? When we pulled up to the corner and there was some little kids out there and grandma and mama, we turned it down. Because we had respect for people. We knew that that language was not appropriate for all audiences. But now people don't care. There's no tenderness. I'm gonna do what I want. This is my world. It's our culture is so foul. And I ain't blaming it on a white man or nothing. We have walked foolishly down this road of, of this culture that we've chosen. Yeah, he had something to do with it. Yeah, they got something to do with the corporations that promote it and all that kind of stuff. But we don't have to eat this filth. Again, there's a time and a place for everything. So yeah, some of that music is cool, it's whatever, but I don't want to hear it outside in front of the kids. You got little kids now. There's no filter anymore. You could go on a phone and type some sexual act, and a 6-year-old will have it on their phone. There's no filter in this world anymore. It's everything for everybody all the time. And that's hazardous. That's hazardous to us. So we've got some work to do. We've got some cultivating of our community to do. We've got some cultivating of our own culture to do. And I want us to do that together as a group. So if you can, please, again, go to the African World Study Group, AFRIKAN, African World Study Group on Facebook. Please follow and like, and go to the African World Study Group, AFRIKAN, or AWSG1 on YouTube, and please subscribe. So we're going to try to build this community up. We used to have, I don't know, we probably had 50, 60 people come through the African World Study Group. There's an entire syllabus that is still around, that is still just as pertinent as it was. I was really on some good stuff when I was younger, because when I tell you there's a syllabus, I just open this thing up. It's 2 binders and it's got everything in there. So we can pick this back up and we can start with ourselves. We're not pointing the fingers at anybody anymore, right? Because when you point a finger, you got one finger that way, you got 3 coming back right at you. So I'm just going to point the fingers at us, right? It's my crib, east side. Let me stop. All right. We have to be about that work. You know, Dr. Clark has gone on. Shaka Musa Barashango has gone on. Dr. Ben has gone on. A lot of the greats have gone on. If not us, who? If not now, when? Is what I will leave you with. And so if you have any questions, since I couldn't find a way to get somebody else on here to actually have the conversation, and I promise to work on that, please leave your questions down below and let's have the conversation offline. And please, again, share this on your page, send it to people that you know may be interested. And like I say always, until next time, in my sexy black man voice, peace and blessings. Peace and blessings, YouTube. Not bad. What's another one? Talking about myself. So, yeah.